Imagine you're in a stadium. Imagine everyone in the stadium is clapping at a low random rate, and you hear a low, dull roar coming out of the stadium. Imagine that 50 or 100 people decide they're going to clap in unison. They're going to cooperate, and maybe with some distinctive rhythm. And what you see is that signal, that rhythm, rise out of the crowd against the background of 100,000 sources of noise as a clear signal. In the same way, cooperation of the action of neurons in the brain contributes to generating clear signal even in the presence of lots of noise. It is the weakening of that cooperation in an older brain that contributes and accounts substantially for why older individuals have trouble struggling operating in noisier environments.
Another issue that plagues the elderly is fear of falling. Most people think that falling is an issue related to our physical strength, but it really starts with our brains.
When we walk, our brains are very, very actively involved in processing us and orienting us. Older people will often be watching their feet as they're walking down the stairs. And because it's a use it or lose it brain, that may not be the best way to go about things, because as you start to rely more on your vision for your balance, you're not using your actual balance system.
As we've seen, plasticity can be used for powerful changes, or positive plasticity. Sometimes in the older brain, the exact opposite can occur, and we witness the ravages of negative plasticity.
If I fall when I'm older, and I realize I couldn't stop myself from falling, I'm really worried about it. So what do? The first thing I do is I turn my head down. I start watching my feet. That's a very negative step. First thing that's bad is that I've used my organ of balance from the beginning of time in my life in this position, and I get pretty good information in this. This is where I'm an expert. Now I'm watching the ground, and if somebody bumps me because I'm looking in near vision, the ground sweeps past me like lightning. So as soon as I'm bumped, my eyes tell me I'm moving over, and they carry me right to the ground. Actually, what I've done is I'm training myself to lose my ability to walk without falling. What I'm saying is you actually learn in lots of ways, inactively, to drive things negatively so that you're less capable, so that you're less versatile, so that you're less agile mentally and physically. Plasticity is a two-way street. It's easy to degrade your brain.
Plasticity gives rise to flexible behaviors, but sometimes if we use our plasticity in a certain way, it actually gives rise to rigidities. The way to think about this is that the brain's plasticity is like snow on a hill in winter. It's because the snow is pliable, you can take many different paths down that hill. If you enjoy that path down the hill, you'll tend to favor that path on subsequent runs. Each time you go down that same run, you'll develop a track. And if you keep going down that track, it becomes a rut. Now, this is the way brain plasticity functions, actually. If you keep doing something, our very plastic brains can give rise to a rigid behavior.
Negative plasticity can sometimes result in mental disorders as well.
Jeffrey Schwartz is a neuropsychiatrist at UCLA, and he works with patients who have obsessive-compulsive disorder. In OCD, of course, you're constantly beset with the idea that something is wrong, that you have left the stove on when you departed the house that morning. He looked at the brain circuitry that underlies this, and basically there's overactivity in a region of the brain which has been dubbed, not surprisingly, the worry circuit. So what he did is teach patients to think about their thoughts differently. In other words, when the idea that you had left the stove on, when that thought arose, he taught the patients, tell yourself two things. Tell yourself, one, it's not real. And two, tell yourself, that's only my brain talking. That's a neuronal glitch. I don't have to pay attention to it. So he did a study comparing patients who learned this form of sort of thought changing and compared them with patients who had received standard medication therapy for OCD. So he found that the activity in the worry circuit quieted down to the same extent in both groups of people. In other words, thinking about your thoughts differently acted back on the worry circuit to quiet it in a therapeutic way, with the result that these OCD patients really were able to shed their illness. They were no longer beset by these burdensome, compulsive, worrying thoughts to the same extent that the medication did. This was a very early indication that the mind can act back on the brain, that the thoughts you think have a physical, measurable effect on the activity of a particular brain circuit.
In this case, mindful attention is believed to transform the mind and free it from the symptoms of disease,